Veritas Aquitus by Bones Boy 15, Chapter 14, Evening News. Yang's grip on Naruto's arm tightened after he asked this question. Before Naruto kept his gaze firmly on Junior, the man's curious expression went through several changes: surprise, worry, and anger. Before he settled with a grim look, Junior grabbed the lien and pushed it back. Get out! Breaking from Yang's grip, Naruto's arm shot out and his hands grabbed Junior's tie. He pulled the club owner from behind the bar and used his other hand to wrap around Junior's head. Junior was slammed face first into the bar before his head was turned to the side. I'm asking nicely, Naruto warned as his skin flickered with golden aura. He pushed down with his hand on Junior's head, and the club owner let out a grunt. Don't make this difficult for me, Xiang. I'd rather not put you in critical care. Miltides, Milani, and Junior's voice traveled through the club, and the twins moved from their booth. The one in silver and green jumped up and aimed a descending axe kick at Naruto's head. Naruto kept one hand on Junior's head, while the other released the club owner's tie and raised to catch the ankle of the girl with a narrow, noticeably bladed heel. Naruto turned his head to avoid the second kick and adjusted his grip to drive the girl's bladed heel into the counter. Militia, the healed girl called to her twin while she used her arm to try and free herself. The sharp red claw was intercepted by Yang's golden gauntlet before it could come any closer to Naruto's head. Thanks, Naruto said to his girlfriend as she defended himself against the healed attack of the other twin, known as Mileni, since the other was Militia, and which Naruto assumed to be short for Miltiades. Despite being stuck, she knew how to adapt to a situation. You are in so much trouble right now, Naruto, Yang returned as she fought off the clawed twin while her normally golden hair burst into flames. She drove a punch into Milta's gut, and the accompanying shotgun blast sent the red-themed girl back to her booth. Yang's now red eyes glared at his blue when he looked at her. Who is Emerald? Can we not, please? Not now, Naruto asked as he used his shins to parry Mileni's low kicks from her one free leg. With a growl, Naruto's skin turned gold and he stomped down hard on Mileni's foot before she could try to kick him again. The girl cried out at her broken toes and that Naruto had ruined her pedicure. While her pain distracted Mileni, Naruto turned over and used both hands to push down on Junior's head, which elected a cry of agony from the club owner while his feet lifted up and kicked Mileni hard in the face. He might have overdone it though, as Melanie was knocked away from the bar and embedded in the far wall. No, Yang growled as she slipped under Miltia's attempt, stabbed and wrapped an arm around the girl's neck, while her other hand twisted a wrist behind Miltia's back. Yang took a rear headbutt to the face, showing no damage afterwards, and then flung herself back. Miltia was thrown from the grass back at the twins' booth once more, this time landing in a head atop the table. The table groaned before it collapsed to the ground. Naruto looked at Yang, who still had glowing hair and red eyes locked in a glare on his form, and then past her at Miltia. The red and black themed twin was atop the remains of the broken table and looked completely out of it. Deciding that perhaps he'd made a mistake in asking his question in front of Yang, Naruto looked down at Junior, whose arm fumbled around for something behind the bar, and scowled. Where are we? All right. Naruto slid Junior slightly to the left and away from whatever his arm was reaching for. You were going to answer my question? Gah, look, kid, I want to answer your question, but I don't want any more trouble than I already have. Junior grit out. Naruto lifted Junior's head from the bar and held the man's head in his hands. Junior cried out in agony when Naruto's skin shone brightly and the whiskered blonde tightened his grip on his cranium. I don't know who you're so afraid of that you won't talk, but you need to realize that they're not here right now, Naruto said darkly. He tightened his grip, and Junior let out a cry. I am. All right, I'll talk. Junior screamed and the pressure on his head lessened. Emerald's a stray thief. She's a thief around your age, good at it too despite it. Referenced her to a few clients and got 30% of the stake. Came in a few nights ago with some pretty boy named Mercury. They were asking about an old member of the White Fang that was rumored to be in town. Said they were hired to escort him out. What's his name? Naruto asked. Junior hesitated, and Naruto sighed before he tightened his grip again. Junior, oh God, Tuscan. His name is Tuscan. Owns a bookshop, Tuscan's book trade. That's all I know. I swear to God, that's all I know. Naruto released Junior's head, and the man dropped into the countertop of his bar, gasping for air. He looked at Yang, who continued to glare at him, before he looked at the Leon on the counter with a shrug. He turned and left with Yang right behind him. The glow in his body dimmed to nothing, while the grunt and patrons of the club watched in fear. As they neared the exit, the silence between Naruto and Yang was broken by the former. My ex-girlfriend. What? Yang frowned. Emerald Sustry. She's my ex-girlfriend, Naruto said as his eyes met Yang's. Why did you ask about her? Yang asked carefully as her semblance dwindled down and her eyes returned to the calm lilac they were before. Naruto stopped and pursed his lips as he carefully thought about his answer. She's a beacon. You only just found that out? Yang asked incredulously as she folded her arms over her chest and stared Naruto down. She's not a student of Beacon. She's a Beacon disguised as a student from Haven. Naruto raked his hand through his hair as he sighed. We ran into each other a while ago. It was an unpleasant surprise. Because anytime you run into an ex, it would be unpleasant, Yang said with a snort. She frowned slightly when Naruto remained quiet. Her eyes dropped to the side awkwardly as it clicked in her head. Oh, yeah, was it my choice to break up? Naruto looked up at the cloudy sky and rubbed the back of his neck. Another sigh escaped his lips and his arm dropped to his side before he looked to the other blonde. Yang, I don't feel the way about her, not anymore. No, I kind of figured that after you interrogated Junior for information about her, Yang said sourly. The words stung, but they were to be expected. I mean it, Naruto said as he took one of Yang's hands in his own. He gave her a small smile and looked at her hands. This feels right. I like this. I like you. I like us. It is fun, Yang said with her own smile as she looked down at Naruto's slightly larger hands around hers, her fingers intertwined with his. Shame your gauntlet is so ugly. Yang. He watched her look up into his eyes and he squeezed her hand gently. Please, I want us to work. I don't want to lose this. Yang was quiet for a moment before he felt her squeeze his hand. What did you mean when you said she is disguised as a Haven student? Naruto hesitated for a moment and looked away. This was something important to him. He liked hanging out with Yang. He liked being with Yang. Not to the point of love, not yet, but he didn't want to risk missing out on it if he did. However, Team Nox was acting without any written approval when they looked into the students of Haven. If anything got out, anything, it would mean the end of their hunting career, the end of their road. Could he really trust Yang with that? Drop that weight on her shoulders. Naruto, I need to know, Yang said to him. Her grip slacked and slowly pulled away. If you can't tell me, I don't know how far we'll go. A secret like this nearly tore my team apart. I won't let something like that happen again. Yes, Naruto tightened his grip on Yang's hand, and he looked back up at her, his eyes hard and his jaw set. Yang, you have to swear to keep this between us. You can't tell anyone, not Weiss, not Blake, not even Ruby. What? I mean it, Yang. Naruto cut her off as he closed the silence between them just a bit more. His hand released Yang's and joined the other to rest on her shoulders. This is something huge. Something that could reignite the war if it's found out by the wrong people. Yang's face turned grim and she put a hand on his arm. Naruto, this is another secret that I know how terrible this is for me to ask, but please, Yang, Naruto implored as he looked into her eyes. Please, promise me you won't tell anyone what I'm about to tell you. They stared silently at each other for what felt like forever. Naruto felt his heart pound in his chest, and his arms trembled lightly as Yang continued to stare into his eyes. Finally, after what felt like hours passed, Naruto let out a breath he didn't know he was holding when Yang spoke. I promise. Naruto pulled Yang into a tight hug that surprised the both of them, but wasn't unwelcomed. Thank you, Naruto mumbled. He didn't realize how much he needed to hear that, how badly he wanted to see their relationship grow, until just now, Yang's arms wrapped gently around his sides, and he let out another breath of relief. They pulled apart and Yang gave Naruto a firm grip. Now, tell me everything, Naruto. Bust her face open. No. Too gentle, Yang mumbled darkly as she sped through the streets of Vale and with a mildly concerned Naruto seated behind her on Bumblebee. Maybe I'll take a page from Nora's book and break her legs. Yang, can you please focus more on driving and less on killing Emerald? Naruto asked. She ignored him and continued to grumble to herself while Naruto sighed. At first, Naruto was pleasantly surprised that Yang didn't want to kill Emerald off the bat for breaking up with him. Retaliation rationalizing that if the dumb bitch hadn't, they wouldn't have never hooked up. That was pretty sensible, and he could agree with it. However, when it came to the whole when and how Naruto ran into Emerald, Yang's pleasant mood, well, as pleasant as you can be when you're told about a secret alliance that could potentially spell doom for the peace between the four kingdoms, quickly soured after Naruto mentioned that Ruby had met the girl first, outside their room, during the night before, while Yang was still awake. Needless to say, protective sister mode had effectively been switched to on. The possessive girlfriend setting quickly joined it. When Yang inquired more about Emerald, Naruto didn't mind it much. He found the slightly possessiveness attractive. Then it became worrying after she started to insult Emerald with colorful language. Naruto ignored his girlfriend's disturbing grumbles. How and slash or why the hell would a taco turn blue? Naruto had no desire to determine. When his pocket buzzed, reaching into his pocket, Naruto lifted it up to his ear just as Yang suddenly made a right into an alleyway and came to a stop. Hello, what? Naruto and Yang both answered their scrolls. We have a problem. We need help now. Blake, what do you need? Why do you need? Yang was cut off by the sound of an approaching yell. Both she and Naruto turned to look behind them, staring in disbelief at what they saw. A freaking giant robot is chasing us! Sun cried out as he and Blake fled from a surprising mechanical beast. This is horrifically awesome! Kurama, are you still there? Naruto asked calmly. I take it that means you saw it? Oh, I saw it. It's the believing part that I need to work on. Better believe it, Naruto. Sun and Blake are being chased by a mechanical monstrosity operated and stolen by none other than Roman Torchwick. Yang, you might want to put those plans of yours on hold, Naruto said as he collapsed his scroll and placed it back in his jacket. We need to help them, right? Save Blake and Sun, then kill the bitch. What? Ruby and Weiss, who were apparently still on Yang's scroll message, asked at the same time. Naruto reached over and ended the call. Yang, drive. Yang tucked her scroll back into her jacket and revved the bumblebee engines. Hang on, Whisker Boy. No arguments here. Naruto grinned as he wrapped his arms lightly around Yang's stomach. She spun around in the alley. The rear tire kicked up asphalt as she did before the two blondes tore out of the alleyway and after the rampaging robot. Damn. I mean, I've heard of road rage, but this is ridiculous. Naruto mused as the war machine started to toss and shove cars out of its way. Duck, Yang warned as she ducked her head down. What? Oof! Naruto's head flew back as the remains of a wrecked car door hit him dead on. Naruto's golden eyes returned their attention to Torchwick's bipedal tank when Sun and the car he stood on were shoved off the freeway. Okay, now I'm pissed. I think you can stop him? Yang asked. Naruto grinned and his eyes flashed. Oh, ye of little faith. Yang, this is me we're talking about. If I don't stop him, the least I'm going to do is make him regret deciding to do this. Then get to work, Whisker Boy. Yes, ma'am. Naruto unwound his arms from Yang's midsection and scooted back on Bumblebee's seat. Then get to work, Whisker Boy. Yes, ma'am. Naruto unwound his arms from Yang's midsection and scooted back on Bumblebee's seat. Carefully, he began to stand up on the bike seat. All the while, his semblance began to show itself as his body began to glow. Standing completely upright, Naruto took a moment to breathe and then slammed his face together. His gauntlets folded out over his hands, and the concealed barrels revealed themselves. Naruto held his left hand behind him and waited for the right moment. That moment came after Neptune jumped down from an overpass and drove his trident into the machine's right rocket launcher. Try to keep up, Naruto said to Yang before a blast fired from his gauntlet. Using the kick to his advantage, Naruto's jump was amplified to send him across cars into the back of Torchwick's war machine. He kept a tight grip on the left rocket pack and looked over at the blue-haired trident user. So nice of you to join me, Neptune said while he tried to pry his weapon free. Any idea on how to stop this paladin? A few. Naruto grinned as he used his free hand to punch deep into the space between the robot's right arm and the cockpit. Naruto grabbed onto something that felt like a cord. This feels important. With a firm yank, Naruto ripped the cord out of the hole he had. The right rocket launcher shuddered and Neptune gave him a look. I really don't like you right now. Would it help if I said I was sorry? Naruto asked sheepishly. He grimaced as the launcher and the blue-haired hunter suddenly shot up into the air. The minstrel teen screamed as he was fired into Sun. Probably not. Naruto decided not to dwell on the injuries he may have just inadvertently caused Sun's teammate. Instead, he pulled himself up and dropped down to look into the cockpit. A rather angry Ginger sat within the machine, but he seemed even more angry when he locked eyes with the blonde. You, Torchwick growled through the intercom. Sir, you are currently rampaging in a no rampaging zone. Stop the robot now, or I will use force. Get off of my machine, you twit. Get get your ramp. Get your machine off of my road, you giant prick. Roman snarled and did something to make the mech start to spin its torso rapidly. Naruto tightened his grip and closed his eyes. Oh, make it stop, he cried. His face started to turn green. Oh, I know I should have had a shrimp ramen. Don't you dare. Oh, this is why I hate kids. Hey, I'm a teenager. Naruto returned as he wiped the back of his mouth and leaned away from the now obscure glass. When Torchwick stopped the spinning feature, he grinned. Hey, Torchhead, is that a new product you're wearing? I think it's a huge improvement. Do you know how hard it was to steal this thing? Probably about as hard as you're going to hit the ground in a few seconds. Naruto quipped as he turned and waved at Weiss, who dropped from a nearby overhead. The Harris spun her rapier around and stabbed it into the ground. While I started to cover the ground, Naruto looked back at the puke-covered cockpit and gave the man within a two-finger salute. Hey, Torchhead, I hope you have a nice trip. What does that even? Oh, there are whippers. Torchwick smirked as he cleared away the semi-digested shrimp ramen that covered his cockpit. His smirk vanished as he spotted the upcoming obstacle. See you next fall. Naruto chuckled as he jumped off of the mech before its foot stepped on the ice. He landed beside Weiss as Torchwick toppled over the edge of the highway. Weiss one sneeze. No, just no. Yang would like it. Naruto and Weiss dropped down to land beside Ruby, Blake, and Yang across from Torchwick's machine. So, what exactly is that thing? Naruto asked as he held his fist up at the ready. The Atlas Paladin 290. The five teens turned to Yang's left as Sasuke dropped down beside her and Haku stepped beside her and Haku stepped out of a mirror beside him. Newest model in warfare, fresh off the factory floor, not even available in stores. I skipped pre-order altogether, Torchwick said with a chuckle as his paladin lifted its arms and made fists. He stole it, and others, Blake added as she lifted her katana. However, I highly doubt it can stand alone against even hunters. Quite so, which is why while you were all chatting it up, I was making a quick call. Torchwick cackled, which prompted Naruto to roll his eyes. Always with the evil cackles. Never do I fight someone with a nice chortle. Is that really what bothers you the most right now? Naruto looked at Weiss with an arched brow. Are you not? Be bothered later, snow days. Ruby called out as she, Blake, Yang, Sasuke, and Haku jumped away from the approaching paladin. Naruto appeared unfazed and didn't move as Weiss stabbed her rapier into the ground again, causing the surface beneath his feet to ice over. The paladin jumped over the ice and over the two atop it. Fool me once! Torchwick's ear was cut off as Naruto jumped up and caught the paladin's rear feet just as it passed overhead and pulled. The machine toppled forward and the smile on Torchwick's face fell when he realized the cockpit was falling right towards Yang. Shame on you! Yang finished as she delivered a powerful uppercut that knocked the paladin back into the air. The group all grinned as they watched the paladin land a good distance away. The grins fell into grimaces as the paladin-like mech landed beside Torchwick's rising paladin. Son of a bitch! Naruto scowled and glared at the newcomer while his face tightened. Though it looked like Torchwick's paladin, only less frightening worthy. The new mech had a design painted on it. However, it was not the markings of the White Fang. Instead of a wolf with 3 claw marks, there was a red mushroom cloud painted onto the mech. There was also a massive pack in the place of the rocket launchers. Fourth ward! Take it down! Sasuke snarled as black aura cracked around him and he rushed forward. Naruto's body shone brightly with gold aura as he followed his teammates' example. The raven-haired teen ducked under a thrown punch from the mech, but failed to avoid the lightning-quick backhand that sent him flying into Naruto. You called me from my work to deal with a few children, Torchwick? The cloud-buried machine's operator asked in annoyance. Hey, these kids are freaking weird, man. Besides, you talk like I'm not paying you. For something this tedious, you should give me double. The double? Torchwick's paladin turned to the fourth war paladin. The thief seemed outraged at the thought. Or would you rather I take my leave? Torchwick grumbled. Fine, double. Just deal with some of the brats, as you insist. The members of the fourth war chuckled lowly. The pack on its back opened up, and no less than 100 robots foot soldiers with the fourth war cloud painted on their featureless heads dropped out of the pack. My model, design as king, is not as offensive as yours, compensating paladin model. Hey, but it does come with a few pawns to defend their king. Oh goody, there's even more robots. Blake irritably bit out as they came. She raised her pistol and took a shot at one. To her surprise, the bullet was deflected by Sasuke's blade. All of the girls on Team Ruby gave the teen confused looks. Take out Toshwick. Sasuke grit out as Blake's are as black arcs of aura crackled across his body. He aimed his sword at the pawns and narrowed his eyes. They're ours. Sasuke. The teen looked at Naruto, who grinned as he cracked his knuckles and stood at Sasuke's right. I'll take the 50 on the right. You take the 50 on the left. Screw you, Uzumaki. I'll take 51. That's the spirit. First one to finish gets to rip the king apart. You're on. The two teams ran headfirst into the mass of machines and soon lost themselves to the joy of mechanical slaughter. Boys will be boys, after all. Yang. Yeah, Ruby. Your boyfriend is weird. I prefer the word fun. Yang countered with a smirk before she glared at Torchwick's paladin as it charged at them. She ran forward and met the machine's punch with one of her own. Do you have this? Haku asked Ruby as she and Weiss called back while Blake assisted her partner. Yang avoided a would-be crippling blow and used the ribbon to trip Torchwick up. Yeah, go help your team. Ruby nodded over at the horde of pawns that swarmed over Naruto and Sasuke. The two teens were hard to see. Even with Naruto's glowing semblance, he looked back at her team and called out, Freezer burn! A few pawns diverted their attention to Torchwick when he was suddenly hidden in a mist caused by a combination of Yang and Weiss quickly threw together. Haku put a stop to their existence with the use of Snowfall's ranged weapon. He rushed into a mirror that formed in front of him in order to escape a hit from a stray laser that came from within the cloud. You've got much better at teamwork, though part of me wishes Ruby wouldn't call the attacks out so loudly. Haku mused as he popped out of the mirror and landed behind the king. Finding a few pawns defending the back they came out of, he shifted Snowfall into its web form and began to clear the way. Thunderstruck, the call from his team leader made Haku back into a hastily made mirror to stand on the other side of the underpass. Haku watched as black arcs of aura spread from the center of the pawn's horde. The pawns froze in place, and Naruto jumped up into the air with a fist cocked back. He thrust it forward just before he landed upright. After Sasuke jumped up, his punch caused the shockwave that knocked all the pawns into the air. Hellstorm! Naruto called out, and his two present teammates started to unload their ranged weapons into the airborne machines. The pawns fell to the ground, disabled and destroyed. Naruto lifted a hand up and caught a pawn on its back before it could land on top of him. He tossed it to the side and grinned at his teammates. Nice shooting, guys. That's how it's done. Well, that's what you get when you obtain a product from overseas. Nothing is as trustworthy as something you make yourself, the king operator said irritably. A laser target aligned itself on the back of Naruto's head, and the operator smirked inside the cockpit. Let's see you stop this one, you little brat. Idiot, move! Sasuke called out as a small cannon popped up atop the king's back and aimed at Naruto. The barrel lit up for a brief second before the light suddenly extinguished as a shot rang out. The cannon exploded just as a loud thump came from the area where the dwindling shroud of mist encased Torchwick. Naruto looked over at the distant building where he spotted a small gleam. With a grin on his face, he held up a thumb and said, Thanks for the save, Kurama. Dumb luck you didn't hang up on me, jackass. Kurama mumbled as he looked up from his rifle scope and loaded another round into the chamber. He turned to the sides as the two familiar faces landed beside him with grunts. Where the hell have you two been? Your team leader sent me on a ride, Neptune mumbled as he shifted his trident into a small rifle before he said it on his back. I took a small drive, had to recover. Sun shrugged. He walked over and knelt down beside the prone faunus. How are they doing? Not bad, but... Oh, that's not good, Kurama mumbled as he peered through his scope at the machine that faced off against his team. That's so not good, Naruto mumbled and took a step back as the king's robotic claw-like right hand shifted into a mace-like extension. The spiked weapon dropped and dangled in front of the king with a chain that connected it to the arm like a flail. Naruto grimaced as the flail retracted and then fired straight at him. This is gonna suck. Sasuke stepped to the side as Naruto flew past with the spiked mace-like weapon embedded in his gut. Haku, got the radar handy? I checked it earlier. Haku said calmly as several of his mirrors formed around the king. The flail that had barreled into Naruto was retracted, and the whiskered teen got to his feet with his arms around his stomach. Gah, son of a bitch! He ruined my jacket. I only got like 3 more of these. Naruto glared at the mech. Storm warning! Sasuke smirked, and black arcs formed around his left arm. Right on cue, Haku ran into a final mirror that formed in front of him. He reappeared behind the king and dashed through the gap in its legs, and latched the tip of Snowfall's whip form onto the interior of the right leg. He jumped over the right arm and disappeared into another mirror. Haku reappeared on the left side and ran back through the gap of the mech's legs to yet another mirror. He moved far too fast for the king operator to counter, and by the time he had finished, the king was nearly teetering due to its limbs being bounced so close together. Naruto grabbed onto the whip to help Haku keep the mech captured, while Sasuke ran forward and jumped onto Snowfall's top whip. His hand started to chirp loudly as sparks of aura formed around it while the raven-haired teen ran at the king. In mere seconds, it sounded like thousands of birds had filled the air, which caused the 3 nearest fauners to cringe at the sound. "This is your end," Sasuke said loudly as he pierced his chirping hand into the cockpit of the king. The arcs of black aura lightning spread across the mechs from his arm. Haku twisted his wrist to the right, and Snowfall retracted from the circuiting war machine. Sasuke jumped back to land beside Naruto, and they watched the king stumble around before it fell to the ground, and the hatch popped open. Instead of a frightened or even hastened in effort to escape the malfunctioned machine foe, what was displayed to the 3 teens made them stare in disbelief. A television screen rose up from the king's cockpit, and the face of the man that was most likely operating it was obscured by static. "Nice try, boys. A good effort. You should rethink your lives. The Fourth War always has a place for those fighting for humanity." Sasuke scowled at the screen. Naruto scowled at the screen, while Sasuke sneered and Haku glowered. The leader of the team glanced at the side when there was an explosion and the sound of a bulkhead engine. Of the sound of a bulkhead's engine, Naruto returned his attention to the madman taunting them. "We'll never join you," he said. He pointed at the screen. "We are Team Nox, future hunters of Remnant, and we will stop the Fourth War once and for all." The man laughed loudly at the proclamation. His face became visible for a half second. Dreadlocks that were pulled back on his tanned skin were the most notable features they could make out from this distance. His mouth was hidden by a bandana, and his eyes were beady. The voice that spoke to them was now distorted and almost hidden by a warning alarm that came from the king. "Good luck." The screen cut out just before the king exploded. The sounds of the city soon became more apparent as the adrenaline wore off. Fire and police sirens came from above the teams, undoubtedly assisting those hurt or endangered by Torchwick's rampage. The engines of airborne news teams started to fill the air, and several camera bots descended from above to overlook them all. "Oh goody, we're going to be famous," Sasuke said irritably. Naruto understood his feelings and mirrored them. He arched a brow when his scroll, something he thought smashed by the king's flail, started to buzz. Naruto pulled his scroll out and opened it. A grimace formed on his face. "Oh, crap baskets." "So, Naruto," Asuma began dryly as a voice of the blonde and his team along with Team Ruby came up on the screen. "When I said to help Team Ruby with their investigation, I meant dig up dirt, look through files, and maybe rough up a few grunts. Can you tell me why there's a news report being broadcast all over the world about 10 teenagers causing chaos and destruction in Bell?" Naruto groaned and dropped his scroll to his side while he palmed his face. "They were so boned." End of chapter 14.